Hello, everybody, and welcome to Visionary Voices Africa, storytelling for impact and for income. This summit is brought to you by the African International Festival, uh, AFIDFF. And we're very excited to have you today. We have amazing keynote speakers from all around the world who are making impact in storytelling, in filmmaking. They are blazing the trail and telling stories that need to be heard. Now, today's summit is about empowering aspiring African storytellers. If you're a budding writer, a filmmaker, a podcaster, or any form of creative, this summit is for you. Now, we are going to be equipping you with skills, knowledge, strategies that are needed to not only hone your craft, but also, equip you to turn your passion into a sustainable profession. We are going to talk about ways to create a global brand while maintaining our homegrown and homebred narrative. So this is African voices, voices that matter, voices that want to make an impact all around the world, telling stories that matter. So to kick us off, we'll be taking the welcome address by our director. Please welcome Mrs. Melanie Maje.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Storytelling for impact and for income. As the Director General of the African International Documentary Festival Foundation, I am honored to kickstart this transformative event. Today, we gather virtually from across the continent and beyond to explore the power of storytelling as a catalyst for change and prosperity. Our goal is to harness the rich African narrative to inspire and drive meaningful, impactful, and sustainable income generation. Let us embark on this journey of discovery, innovation, and collaboration together. Thank you for joining us. With great pleasure, I also want to thank our excellent speakers for graciously agreeing to share their wealth of knowledge and expertise with us today. From the likes of Dr. Janice Marie Collins, the past president of AFIDEF, and also the likes of other great speakers that are here with us today. To all our participants, please seize this invaluable opportunity to engage with our esteemed speakers. Please ask questions and garner insights that can propel your journey in storytelling for impact and income. Your presence here also signifies your commitment for making a difference through the power of narratives. And I encourage you to immerse yourself fully in the discussions and activities ahead. Together, let us embrace the potential of storytelling to effect positive change and foster economic empowerment. Thank you once again for joining us on this transformative journey. And I want you to please feel free to join our community of more than 3,000 professionals and volunteers across the world. We are welcome to this great summit. Thank you. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Malami. Thank you. And to our audience, thank you all so much for joining us. Please make sure to use the comment section, leave your questions and your comments. Our speakers will be answering your questions as we go along. So we're jumping right in to our first keynote speaker. Trust me, you want to hear from her. She's a multinational award-winning professional journalist and producer, director, writer, editor, cinematographer, reporter with more than 35 years of experience in the media industry. She is also an international and national award-winning professor, scholar, researcher of mixed methodology, and creative with 20 years of experience on the university level. Our keynote speaker has won multiple Emmys, Best of Garnet Associated Press, NABJ, AABJ, and other esteemed awards for writing, producing, reporting, cinematography, directing, and editing. She directed, produced, wrote, edited, narrated, and filmed the award-winning web series and television documentary A Taste of Valor, that won Best Documentary at the International Garifuna Film Festival in Venice, California. Over 10 million viewers have watched her documentary, aired regionally every February on PBS over the past 4 years. She researched, directed, wrote, edited, narrated, filmed, and produced an award-winning comprehensive, and I mean 5 hours, autoethnography series called Journey to My Mother's Land, Extending the Gates Effect into Africa, that chronicles her immersion trip back to her maternal ancestral land of Sierra Leone, West Africa, and the Mende tribe. She was also the president of the African International Documentary Festival Foundation from 2018 to 2020. Please join me to welcome Dr. Janice Marie Collins.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Grace. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And it is wonderful to see Madam Director General Malame Manja, my sister from across the lands. It is wonderful to meet everyone. It is wonderful to see everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I have some wonderful slides. We don't have a lot of time together, but I do have some interesting facts and information that I can share with you when you're talking about impact and income. And when you talk about impact, you're talking about um, having a story that moves you in some way, that moves the audience. When I say you, I mean the audience in some way. So I want to get straight to the slides and let's see. Oh, wonderful. The slides are up. Okay, great. So when we talk about crafting compelling narratives, and we're talking about the art of art of storytelling, it is an art and a skill. So I've told stories for almost 40 years in books, in articles, in secular books, in academic books, as Sister Grace just talked about, documentaries, documentary series, broadcast news and journalism, investigative journalism, a number of different ways. And each time there's a formula, but really what's important is about being authentic. So, for instance, as you move through these slides, each slide has a story. I'm giving the narrative to the story that you're seeing. So when you think about compelling stories, I want you to think about taking a train ride or a boat ride through a town, maybe on the water there. That's in Abuja, Nigeria. That is my brother Titus. And he's looking out over the water, and I wanted to capture that. I wonder what he's thinking. And as you're telling a story from beginning, middle, and end, you want to narrate a story that has rhythm, that has inflection, that has a number of areas where they're so immersed in the story, they're hearing what you're saying, but they're also going on the voyage with you. So next slide, please. So as we look at this, we can look at the aspect of what does this really mean? When we say compelling considerations, when we say compelling, that means there's an emotional response or a call to action. When you write a compelling story, there's something about it that is going to move your audience or move policy or move legislation. There's a call to action, even if it's moving an emotion. You have social responsibility when you have the power of the pen, the power of film and documentaries. That also means that you have the social responsibility and accountability for everything that you put out, every story, every word, every image that you put out. You want to bring life to something that has been dormant. It may be new information or maybe transformational information. If you think about it, this whole event is a story. That's why I tell my students, I've been teaching for over 23 years, and I tell my students and at my workshops, everyone has a story. Everyone. And there's a story around you right now as you're sitting, as you're watching, as you're listening. There's a story right now about what's happening in your life. There's truth and facts. When we have a code of ethics agreed upon and was introduced by the the professional organization, the Society for Professional Journalists. And what we have our code of ethics. So one of our code of ethics is to seek truth and report it. That means in journalism, for instance, we don't have opinion. In documentaries, we can have opinion that are subjective, followed by facts. But we have the code of ethics where we have the speak the truth and report it, be fair and balanced, minimize harm, be independent. So these are things that we adhere to and standards that we adhere to when we're doing journalism and storytelling. You want to centralize your focus, which means how are we going to begin? So centralizing the focus, Director General Madam Malame Manja centralized this event, gave us a focus, and our focus is storytelling for impact and income. And then the WIFM, that's a new word that I want you to remember. The WIFM here means what's in it for me? And that's the audience. If you're talking to the audience and you want them to have some time, you want to say, what's in it for me? What's in it for them? Why should they listen to you? That's a part of storytelling. If you can capture that, as Malame said, to learn about how to make impact and income. Who doesn't want to make income? And why not make an impact while you're doing it? When people believe and trust in you, and you have credibility, and you're trustworthy. So we have the key elements to professional writing, publishing, and distribution by connecting to your audience. There's a story idea, there's a written content, and there's audio, rhythm, and visual. So this aspect here, I want to show you here. This is a young lady. This story, I want to tell you a story about each slide. This story is a young lady that I was in a village, and this is her first thing in the morning. I call it sun-kissed Black beauty. No makeup, no nothing. This is what this young lady looks like first thing in the morning. She smiled. She allowed me to take her picture. That is a story. This young man here, when I was in my degree, I visited a camp there and I was talking about storytelling. And with the storytelling, um, he came up to me afterwards and said he had written 3 books already. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really exciting. And so that is a story here. And pictures speak 1,000 words, right? And so when you're writing your story, a lot of times what I do for my compelling stories is like I tell individuals, I can't tell you how many awards I've won, even though you can see some of the Emmy awards here. I have some Emmys in case somebody wanted to see them. It's not about how many awards, but I can tell you the stories. I can tell you the people because I always, when I think about impact, I'm a humanist and a humanitarian. So I'm a storyteller for impact. That's what I do. That is my calling. And so when I look at that and I look at storytelling for impact, I go 1 to 2 levels deeper than other people. What I look at is what story has not been told? What am I seeing? What voice do we not hear? So you want to have a single question that at the end of your story, at the end of your chapter, at the end of your episode, at the end of your campaign, your ad, you want to have a story that answers a single question, major question. What is that question? What do they know? What do you want them to know? That's transformation. And what should they know? And why? Why should they know it? Again, that's the whiff and what's in it for me. So here is another story of children that I celebrated a holiday with them, and they were so loving, so innocent as children. And this little girl here, she just was a dancer and she wanted to pose. So I took a picture. That's her story. That's another thing that's important. When you have compelling impact stories, you want the story really isn't about you unless you're the subject. So you have to allow them to have voices. You have to allow your audience to have voices. Okay. And when you're writing, whether it's written, whether it's audio, whether it's a film, you want to cover the 3 C's. When I think of broadcast, it's not just broadcast television or broadcast radio, it's actually broadcasted um, online. That's digital online. So the 3 C's are clear, concise, and conversational. You want to speak and write clearly, straight to the point, concise, and make it conversational because in order for you to have impact, you want to be able to share and talk with your audience. So it's not about the volume of the information that's important, it's the clarity that counts. You are the storyteller, so if you don't know what something means, don't use it. Or if you use it, make sure you explain what that means. And then we say, when it gets complicated and we're not really sure, what we do is we say we kiss it. I say kiss it, which means keep it simple, sweetie. Just keep it simple. Don't make it too complex. Just keep it simple when you're going to the aspect. There are areas of formulas that you can write, and this PowerPoint will be shared with you. All of the ones who have registered and all of the ones, the organizers, will share this PowerPoint with you so you can have this for you. I want you to put that in your toolkit. So we have, these are just a couple of the models that we use that anytime you're in a hurry, you can actually write to this. So we call this the pregnant eye. It has a beginning, middle, and end because it looks like an eye here. So the lead here sells the story. This is why you should listen. What's in it for me? This is why you should listen. The body tells the story, which you cover the 5 W's and the H, which is the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then you have the tag, which summarizes and says what's next. And then if you write just strictly in print, they usually, or online, they usually use the hourglass, which you have the same aspect. You have a lead, you have a body, and you have a tag. Usually right here is a transition. You're going to the next page turn of your story online or page turn of your story, your web story that's written. And you have important facts at the top and important facts at the top here. Because a lot of times we lose the information and our attention as we get closer, sometimes when it goes to written word. So this is a conclusion, but you want to put your important facts up first. Finally, I want you to keep in mind, I'm going to show you some examples that I'll play for you. I want you to keep in mind, I'll share the links as I'm doing this. I have about 10 minutes left. People remember some of the information, but most importantly, how you made them feel. How was this? How did your story present itself and make you feel? How did it make them feel? They remember the beginning, some of the middle, depends on how you tell the story, and the end. Just like a conversation, they remember the beginning, how you started it. You got my attention. Did you hold my attention? And at the end, what do you want me to do now? And then we look at, you need to educate your audience to understand your message. A lot of times people may not pick up on your message because they're not educated within the realm of what you're trying to say. So that's important. And then you have representation. So even in this picture, these are women who took care of me when I was in a village and I was leaving, and they took a picture. They told us to pose for a picture, and this is what they looked like. They captured it. It was so wonderful. It wasn't expected. It wasn't staged. It was just authentic. And to me, this picture also speaks 1,000 words. So here are some links that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with the organizers as well. They have the PowerPoint. In this PowerPoint, you actually have these links as well. So it depends on how you want to look at certain aspects. So for instance, there is a story about the Olympics. The Olympics came to Atlanta, Georgia. And yes, thank you. These, you can take a look at the link. It came to Atlanta, Georgia. And what happened in an area, they were moving an area out, dislocating individuals that happened to be in the Black community, where they had to find someplace else to live. And I thought to myself, each time I saw a crime or a story about something that's not good, it was always in this area. And it was called Techwood Homes. And I wanted to tell a story, but I didn't want to tell the story. I didn't live in Techwood Homes. I wanted a way for them to tell their own story to the audience. Authentic voices is what's important. So you have to be careful as a storyteller not to make the story yours. Let them tell the story. I'm going to just show you how to bring the elements in at the beginning. Now, the quality isn't so good as far as the video, because we were shooting actually on film, on tape at that time, but you'll get the gist of it. Okay, so here is, oh, let me see here. Thank you. Let me see what I have here. They put the links up here in the chat. Let's see. Oh, 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 that's not it. That's not it. Oh, hold on. Okay. Let me go back here. Okay, so it looks like I'm trying to, um, let's do this. If you can still see my screen, right? Can you see my screen? No. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Um, share screen. Let's share screen. Okay. Let's share screen here. Let's do this. And let's share screen. Can you see that? I don't think you can. I'm not seeing it. Okay. So, um, let me just, okay, that's great. If you could pull up the first link, that would be wonderful. Let's see here. Oh, it may be a delay on this. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, let's go here. Okay, I'm not sure if you can actually see that. Okay, So, organizers, if you were to pull up the first link in the PowerPoint, that'd be great. If not, we're not going to worry about it. Okay. 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 So basically, I'm going to let you all look at that at a different time because for some reason it's not bringing up the actual. Stop sharing there. It's not bringing up um, the actual aspect of what I'm trying to do. But what I have in there is I have a link that will actually show you living in the madness, how you can live in the madness. And what I did, you'll see a story. It's a three-parter. This actually won an Emmy Award for writing, and it also won a National Association of Black Journalists Award for storytelling and editing. And so what's important about that aspect is that I found a way to marry in Atlanta, Georgia, which was the music mecca. I found a way for music to marry with the story, and you'll see how I allow the story to be told by the ones that are most impacted. You will also see a story based right there in Maiduguri, Nigeria, when I went to an IDP camp. The first story that you will see them telling their story. The second story, when I've told them this is transformational, the second story is that I've told them that they can always dream. No one can take that away from you, and that you can always dream. And you don't realize the impact as I come back to the United States, I start to look at my video, I start to look at my translation. And in the background, as I look at my video, I can hear the background when I gave them their cameras and I told them that everyone has a story. You can dream. You can go to a faraway place and no one can stop you. As I'm looking at the footage in the background, I hear over and over, 1, 2, 3, you can dream. 1, 2, 3, you can dream. So please understand the power of telling your story, the power of bringing a story to the audience. It is impactful. And to me, all money is not good money. So if you want to make an income and you do it through storytelling, be authentic, be ethical, be kind, minimize harm where you can, and change the world to a better place. I thank you so much for your time. God bless each and every one of you. It is wonderful to be here with the esteemed guests. And I thank AFIDFF, yes, the organization that Madam Director General Malame Manja and myself founded and began together, and it has grown, and you all have done wonderful things. I'm so proud to be in your company. God bless you and have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the workshop. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Janice. That was so insightful. Just a quick question. You had said that authentic voices is what's important. Now we live in a world where there's a lot of information coming our way. Everybody's just trying to sort of be like everybody else. How can our aspiring storytellers work on authenticity in today's world?
Well, that's a really great question. Thank you so much, Sister Grace, for asking that question. For my answer would be, as I require in my classes, even when I'm grading you and I'm listening to you, I'm listening to your stories, I want to grade you and not something from AI. I want to grade you in what's authentic. So the way to do it is not to always follow the leader. Don't always follow the crowd. What's important, I believe that everybody is born with a gift to give to the world. And what that means, sometimes when you don't fit in, is because God wants you to stand out. And sometimes that also means that only you can tell the story in the way that you tell the story. There are a lot of individuals that, because I've won these awards, for instance, they learn from me, they copy me, they emulate me. Now, sometimes that works, but it's not exactly how I would do it. As a matter of fact, some of them have found ways of doing it better. Some of them have found ways of doing it different. And it need to be different for a number of ways. So in order to build your confidence and in order to sustain income and impact when you're telling stories is to make sure that it's authentic. You can only be yourself. You can learn from the greatest. You can learn and apply it to what you've learned from someone else who's done great things. And that's wonderful. But the fact is that at the end of the day, it's just like painting a Picasso. At the end of the day, only Picasso can paint. Only Dr. Collins can tell her story in a particular way. I surround myself with individuals of diversity to make it even better, make it even more impactful. I love collaborating. But it is still, if I'm the director, if I'm the producer, if I'm the writer, I'm looking at it in a way where it's still, what does that speak? The editing speaks, the videography speaks. So to be authentic means to be who you are. It's the only thing that you can replicate over and over and over and over again is yourself. It's a more improved and more enhanced and advanced self. So try to be authentic to that.
Welcome, Teniola Zara King. She is passionate about storytelling and has proven her ability to share impactful narratives through her scripts and films. Throughout her career, she has contributed to uplifting other filmmakers and conveying meaningful messages to her audience. She is a writer, director, filmmaker, and one to watch. Once again, it's Teniola Zara King. Hi, Teniola, you're welcome.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. Okay. Grace, would you like me to start? Okay, cool. Grace is done. Okay, cool. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining wherever you are in the world. My name is Teniola Zara King, and I'm going to be doing a quick presentation on going from the script to the screen. So I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me a second, please. 1 second. New technology. Presents. Yes. Share screen. Okay. Please do let me know if you can see that. Okay. It's not showing the right ones. Not sure. First start. Okay. All right. So let me just go into this. Okay, perfect. All right. So once again, thank you for joining, everybody. As I said, my name is Teniola Zara King, and I'm going to be doing this presentation on From Script to Screen. So just a bit about me. Do let me know if it's changing. I think it's changing on mine, but isn't. Okay, good. Now it's changing. All right, a bit about me. I went to the University of Liverpool. I studied economics before becoming a filmmaker. And then I quickly went on to be a producer in Nigeria. I've done a few short films, Giddy High Life and Teddy's Tale most recently. And currently I am working on 2 TV pilots, for one for Sky and another for 11 Productions. So let's get straight into it. I'm always conscious of being on the clock because I'm like, okay, I like to talk, but at the same time, we've only got 20 minutes, so I need to be as quick as possible. So from script to screen. There are 5 stages of films, and what's very important is that people usually don't understand that with these 5 stages of films, most people only get to the development stage, and they usually don't get into pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution because they fail at the development stage. So I'm here to speak to you about all these 5 different stages. I'm going to focus a lot on development because once you can get through that particular stage of production, then you're probably likely to go on to the other stages. So, that's my pages. Okay, so development. In development, you have 3 things that you need to focus on. You have the story, you have the pitch, and you have funding, which is where you get your green light, meaning that you can actually go on to make your amazing film or your amazing documentary. A story. As the definition here says, a story is a depiction of a journey. In a story, we follow a character or a series of characters as they pursue a goal and come against certain obstacles. For every story, you need to answer 5 questions. Who are they? Where are they? What do they want? Why do they want it? And will they get what they want? The amazing speaker before me, Dr. Collins, already spoke about storytelling in general. So I'm not going to focus too much on it, but there are a few points I would like to make with regards to story in general. So there's a cliche in film that says story is king. I like to say cliches are there for a reason because it's true. For any film that you want to make, any documentary that you would like to make, you need to ensure that at the heart of it is a compelling story that you're trying to tell. People think that with good production value, with good cameras, lighting, sound, with all the best gear in the world, with the best crew and cast, that you can have an amazing film or an amazing documentary. But ultimately, at the core of it is to ensure that you have a very, very good story. Because once you have a good story, then every other part of the production process will hopefully go smoothly, but they'll be enhanced because you have a good story. Whereas if you have everything else in place and the story isn't good, nobody's really going to care, or nobody's going to remember, or it's not going to be a story that lasts the test of time. So story is king. If there's anything I want you to take away from this particular presentation, is the fact that story is king. So how to develop your ideas? Ideas can come from anywhere. You have your personal ideas. Ideas can come from dreams. Ideas can come from books, from concepts, from speaking to people. There's so many different ways you can get a story. But as I said before, once you do get your story, just remember that the story and developing that story is the most important part of getting your story from the script to the screen. So, as Dr. Collins also said, there is a craft to storytelling. I'm not going to go into the logistics of it. If you want to take a screen grab, do take a screen grab, because this is a particular structure I like to use. There are different structures, but I'm not going to go into depth because of time. One thing I will say is this: when it comes to storytelling, there's a craft to storytelling. Many people think that because they love films and because they love documentaries, that means by default they can tell a film. But the truth of the matter is, for example, I love music. I don't know about the people listening, but I love music. I love Afrobeats. But if you put a piano before me and I don't know how to play a piano, I'm ultimately going to play rubbish because I haven't learned the craft and the skills of how to play a piano. And it's the same thing with storytelling. You must know how to tell a story. And each story that you see, or the amazing stories that win awards, are stories that followed a particular arc, from the exposition to the inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, and to the denouement. That word was tripping up. But by following an arc in your story, you can ensure that you're taking your audience on a journey with their characters that they can understand. So please do make sure that every time you are telling a story, that you follow and respect the craft of telling a story. People say rules are there to be broken, which sometimes they are, but you do need to understand the rules first before you break them. Okay. So last thing I'll say on story for now is these are 2 books I would definitely recommend you should read if you're trying to get into story and storytelling. One is Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. Another is Robert McKee's Story. Save the Cat is a more concise book. So if you do like it, if you don't like reading, which you should, but if you don't, it's that I think only like 200 pages, so you can go into that. Robert McKee's story has a lot more in-depth breakdowns of storytelling in general, so I would strongly recommend that you read both these books. All right, so you've gotten your story done, you've gotten your ideas, you've read the books, you've done all the crafts, you've literally gotten your story to a team. The next thing you need to do is to pitch your story. One thing I will focus on with regards to the pitch, as I said, I don't have that much time, so I'm going to focus on one thing, which is the log line. Now, what is a log line? A log line is basically a summary of your whole story. People hear of the elevator pitch, which is when you get into an elevator, you see someone that you want to pitch to, and you quickly pitch that person. One thing you can use to do that is your log line. I'll give you an example of a log line that I love. Many people have watched Game of Thrones. If you haven't watched Game of Thrones, I would strongly recommend that you go and watch Game of Thrones because it is literally TV at its best and storytelling at its best. So the logline for Game of Thrones is this. In the mythical land of Westeros, 7 noble families fight for control of the Iron Throne, while an ancient enemy returns after being dormant for thousands of years. Now, if anyone that has watched Game of Thrones here, you would realize that the 8 seasons of Game of Thrones respect this logline. And the purpose of having a logline is to ensure that you're able to summarize your film into one sentence that anybody you pitch that logline to can understand exactly what you're talking about. Another example I'll give is my film. My film is called Teji's Tale. If you haven't watched it, check it out on YouTube. But my logline is this. Set in the 1950s, Teji relocates to London from Lagos to study, but she faces challenges adapting when her colleagues demand to see her tale. Now you can see in brackets I've put time, who, where, want, and the obstacles. Going back to story, I spoke about how stories, you're asking the 5 Qs, who are they, what do they want, why do they want it, will they get it, and what's stopping them from getting it. In your logline, you must ensure that you answer those questions as easily as possible and as quickly as possible. So next on the agenda of writing a pitch, you should also have a treatment. So let's say you've been able to pitch your elevator pitch to somebody and they're like, okay, let me see a treatment about the story you want to tell. In your pitch, you need various things from your genre to your target audience. So genre being, is it rom-com? Is it drama? Is it horror? Is it thriller? I personally don't like horror, but if you do like horror, why not? Next is your target audience. Who is the film for? Is it for family? Is it for 18 plus? Like, who is your target audience for your film? Next, you have your synopsis, which is basically just a summary about what your story is about. Main characters, all the different characters you have that will make your story, the main characters that will propel your story forward. Try and make it as concise as possible. One thing with regards to treatments is you shouldn't make them too long because unfortunately in this TikTok and Instagram age, you have people that aren't used to paying too much attention to things. So the more you can simplify your treatments, the more likely it is for people to want to actually read it and listen to it. Read it more like and listen to your pitch. You also have your themes. So what themes are is your story going to explore? Is it themes of love, themes of death? Is it justice? Is it crime? Is it man against nature? All these different films that you watch and documentaries that you watch, when you look at them, all of them have a central theme that they're trying to explore. So part of your treatment is to show people, okay, this is the theme and this is why we're telling the story. Also, you need your film elements, so cinematography, sound, production design, costume, maybe makeup, depending on the type of film you're telling. Just make sure you can basically paint a visual picture of what your film is going to be about and let people know that this is why they should want to see this film made. And lastly, but most importantly, why this story? People want to know why they should be interested in the story. People want to know why they should give you their money to do this film. People want to know why you should be the person to tell that story. Why can't it be anybody else? So once you have all these different things on lock, then you're ready to pitch and you're ready to go to the next stage. So you've gotten your treatment done, you've gotten your story done, and now you're going to go to the actual pitch where you're going to pitch your film to people. In this day and age, you have various ways to pitch to people. Sometimes you're called in to pitch physically. Sometimes it's going to be on Zoom. Other times it might just be the treatment to tell that person. Whatever it is, your pitch is very, very key because this is when you can, as I say in Nigeria, sell your market. So things to do before a pitch: rehearse with your friend, let them ask you questions, go over it a few times, relax, It's life. Don't worry, it's just film. So relax, take your time with it. Be confident but friendly. People like to work with people that they like. So please do make sure you smile, have a big smile on your face, and ensure that you enjoy yourself. Most importantly, you need to know your work. It's amazing how many people go into a room and they don't know the ins and outs of what they're trying to do. So whenever you're going into the pitch, you must know all the questions. Like think of any question they could possibly ask you and go for it. And lastly, but most importantly, no isn't forever. People like to think that when they get to know, that means the idea is terrible. Sometimes, yes, maybe you might need to go back to the drawing board and look at it again and try and make it better. Or sometimes it's just not for that person, and that's fine. And there's a quote I like to quote quite a few times by Letitia Wright, and she says, "If it's for me, it won't pass me by, and if it passes me by, then it's not for me." So by default, not everything is for everybody. But when you find that person that loves your story, you've done the good treatment, you've done the good pitch, and they like it, then you get a yes someday. All right, next, funding. So this is all development, as I said. And the reason why I'm really breaking down development is because in the development process, once you can get this done and you get the money, then you're good to go. Most people, most filmmakers especially, we can't get our stories done. We can't get our stories from our heads to the screens because of money. But once you do get the funding, then you're good to go, as I said. So funding. The different ways you can get funding, personal funding. I personally don't like to do personal funding because it's your money, but if you have enough money, then please do go ahead and personally fund your film. You have crowdfunding. I'm going to dig into that a bit deeper because crowdfunding is a way that a lot of people do get their films funded. I did a film called Giddy High Life quite a few years ago now, and I was able to raise nearly £9,000. And that was through just literally my pitch and my treatment and telling people why this is an important story that needs to be told. So crowdfunding is something people use a lot. Apart from crowdfunding, you have film funds. A lot of people aren't aware that there's so many film funds online that you can apply to fund your film. But you just need to do the search. You just need to do the research. You need to take out time to see the particular funds that may pertain to the type of story you're trying to tell. And as I said before, make sure your pitch, make sure your treatment is top notch. Make sure you don't give them any reason to say no to you. And even if they say no, there's always another opportunity around the corner. So don't lose hope. And lastly, production companies. So the truth of the production companies is they are always looking for some new stories, they're always looking for new documentaries, they're always looking for the next TV series. Unfortunately, most of them won't talk to you because of agents, but then I am a master in literally cold emailing people and getting things done. So there's no harm in approaching people. As they always say, the answer will always be no if you don't ask. So why not ask? Why not send that email, send that treatment, and see what people might have to say about that. Okay, so development is done now. The next stage of film is pre-production. I'm going to break that down very, very quickly because time is ticking very quickly. So we have cast and crew, location scouting. This is when you go out to find out where you want to shoot your film. We have the rehearsals that you do with your cast and crew, and you have equipment finalizing where you get all the different equipment that you want to use for your film. I'm going to break down cast and crew because those are two very, very, very key elements that all the other elements kind of fall under. So cast and crew. You have your cast. You have lead actors, supporting actors, stuntsmen, extras. Everybody that is a cast member is somebody that you see on screen itself. For crew, you have the executive producers, as my Nigerians would say, they're at the tops. These are the people that have the money, that will give you the money. The producers, you have writer director, which I am. You have so many different people. I won't go into all of them. But the main thing I do want to say about choosing your cast and crew is that you should choose people that are at the top of their game, obviously according to the budget that you have. But apart from choosing people that have amazing skill, it's very important that you choose people that have good character. Now, depending on the project, let's say, for example, you're doing a short film, it's a shorter amount of time that you'll need to spend with that person. But let's say, for example, you're doing a documentary for a year or 2 years, or you're doing like a TV series that will last for like quite a few years. You kind of need to like the people that you work with to an extent. And character is something that will draw you to the person or not. So even when you're casting people, like there's a lot of skill everywhere, but it's character that's very, very important to pay attention to when you're trying to hire a casting crew. And even if you are the person being hired, people have been hired because they have a good smile. I literally hired someone the other day for a job I did because somebody else recommended him and said, oh, he always has a smile on set. So just ensure that no matter what stage of the production process you're at, that your character shines through, because there's so many people that have skill, but not a lot of people have the character to carry out those skills. All right. Next, we have production itself. This is finally when we're on sets. We're having fun. We're shooting the film. You can either shoot on sets, which are built sets in stages, or you can shoot on location, which is actual houses or wherever the location is for the particular scripts. And I added problem solving. Now, anybody that has ever been on set before, done a film or a documentary, will know that problems will always arise. I remember I was on set for my short film, and literally in the middle of the day, the fire alarm just went off, and nobody knew how to put it off. The fire alarm turned on, and nobody had to put it off. And it took a whole hour of our day, and we just had to find ways around it. Okay, should we do lunch now? Should we do rehearsals now? Should we do this or that? So just expect to have problems on sets. Obviously, people pray and say, oh my God's great, we won't have problems, but it's just part of set life. So just always be prepared for those, but don't let them get you down. Just put your head down, think of solutions, and just keep it moving, because at the end of the day, the film will get done. You just have to overcome some obstacles. All right. Next part of film production is post-production. Trying to really speed up because we only got 3 minutes left according to my time. So post-production, I'm not going to go into the details of this because it's quite self-explanatory. You have editing, which is the process of bringing the film together. You have visual effects, which is all the nice, amazing stuff they add. Look at Avengers and other things like that, Game of Thrones. Sound design and final mix. I will pick on sound design. Sound design is usually not really focused on in film because people usually look at the visuals and the angles and the lightings and the camera and this. But sound design can really, really elevate your film if you pay attention to it. So if you are going into film, do make sure that you pay particular attention to it. And lastly, we have color grading. Color grading is basically how you create moods with color and how you enhance the story with color. One very popular example of this is The Matrix. When you watch The Matrix, you see that there's a lot of green in The Matrix because they're trying to show that whole technology side and like the coding side of The Matrix. If I'm watching Matrix, please go and watch Matrix. And lastly, we have stages of filmmaking. We have distribution. So you finally shot your film, you've got the money, everything's good, you've edited it, everyone's happy with it. And now you need to distribute your film. The different things you have for distribution, first of all, you need a press kit. So a press kit is basically when you break down all the different things that you need that show what your film is about. In particular, you have a poster, you have your short and long synopsis, which is the summary of the film, who the cast and crew is, technical specifications, film stills, etc. So this is a press kit I did for my short film Teji's Tale. I'm not going to go into the details of it because there's no time anymore, sadly. But just glancing through, you can see this is the cast that was part of Teji's Tale. And you can also see these are the technical specifications for Teji's Tale alongside film stills. Distribution, you also have festivals. So Film Freeway is an amazing tool that you can apply to so many different film festivals at once. But it's very, very essential that you know that they're very expensive. So only apply to film festivals that are specific to your film, and also try and apply for the ones you can actually physically attend, because it's when you go to those film festivals that people can meet you in person and hopefully offer you other opportunities to do your films. And hopefully you can get an award too. You can also have personal distribution, where you put on YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, Twitter. There's so many different platforms now that you can share your work. You have film communities. Here in England, we have Bounce and other things like this. But wherever you are in the world, look into the film communities that you have and try and share there. And lastly, you have private screenings as well. So even if you can't get into any particular platforms, you could do a private screening where you invite your friends and family to come and watch, and people that may be interested in your film. Last but not least, from getting your script to the screen, you have online streaming platforms. You have short film platforms. Here in the UK, we have Short of the Week is actually global. We have MIM and other platforms. As I said before, do look at your community and see which platforms that are there and apply to those. So let them know that you have a film that you want to distribute on. And the bigger boys, we have the Netflixes, Amazons, Apple TVs, and all those. I know you can pay to put some of your films on this, other way around. They will pay to put your films on those platforms, or the specific procedures you must go through to get to that stage in particular. And yeah, that is it for script to screen. So I'm going to just leave you with this quote. And it says, "The beauty of film is that it has the ability to transport you from the comfort of your seat to another time, place, or human experience. For a moment, even though it's a brief one, you get to see the world from someone else's perspective." And that is it from me. Got there in the end. Thank you. How should students try to tell an impactful story in the comments? Grace, should I go straight into it?
Oh, yes, please. So we have some questions for you from our online audience.
Hmm.
And Dominion Bider is asking, how should students trying to tell an impactful story in their community but have funding problem go about seeking funds?
Um, so once again, there are quite a number of platforms that do provide funds, especially for African storytellers. Um, One thing I would definitely say is going back to what I said with regards to like pitch and treatment, you need to make your story as unique as possible. How are you going to tell the story in a way that hasn't been told? How are you going to, as I said, sell the market of the story? Funding is hard to come by, but at the same time, it's also very easy to come by if you have the right story to tell and people are intrigued into it. Dr. Collins said something earlier, which I really agreed with. She spoke about how did you make people feel. So this story you're trying to tell, when you pitch it to this person, how are they going to feel at the end of it? Is this something that they're going to want the whole world to see, or is it something that they're going to be like, I rather not see that? The most powerful stories that you hear are the stories that are the ones that you think about days later because it's really impacted how you felt and it really impacted just everything. Like it made you stop for a moment and think about this story. So I would definitely say that. Another thing I would say is also be realistic about how much money you need. Is it something that you can crowdfund with your friends, with your family? Is it something that you can maybe fund yourself if you can't fund yourself? Is it something that you can shoot on a phone? There's so many different equipment so many different bits of equipment that we can use to shoot. There's a film that won, what's going on my head now? I think like a one Sundance, one of these major festivals, and it was all shot on the phone. So it's like one thing I always say is don't let what the world tells you is good quality filmmaking stop you from being a filmmaker. Use what you have, and if the story is good, people will pay attention. As long as you just do the basics like having good sound and having good footage and like good angles. Do what you can with what you have.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. I wanted to just piggyback off of that one, because I was thinking about low budget films and their relevance in 2024. And I think in some part of the world, maybe some places in Africa, we find a lot of storytellers who are sort of just running their own show, no international funding. They've just got a camera, their friends are the cast and the crew. And it's turned out so beautiful. They post their videos on YouTube and
Mhm.
it goes big.
Yeah.
So I think that's also something. So we have another question. Someone wants to know how they can guard against piracy.
Ah, I don't think there are any guards in this day and age. Let's just tell the truth. I think piracy is something we've been fighting with since those days that they were selling DVDs. Even me,
Yeah.
let me not confess my sins online, but I to be very honest, I don't think you can really guard against it. Sadly, it depends on what stage it's at. If it's at script stage, then you can get people to sign NDAs, so non-disclosure agreements. But once it's out in the world, like there's only so much you can do. You have platforms like, for example, my short film Teddy's Tale is on YouTube, so anybody can really just take the film now and go and show it anywhere they want without me knowing. So unfortunately, you can't really guard against piracy these days.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Teniola. This was such an amazing session. Thank you so much.
You're
Our
welcome.
audience, everyone's just had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are moving on to our next keynote speaker. Please welcome Nick Wambugo, a filmmaker, director, producer, drone pilot, Academy Award nominee. Please let's welcome Nick onto the stage. Hi, Nick. While he's coming on, I just want to tell you a bit about Nick because you're going to love him. He has directed and produced multiple documentaries and short films, showcasing his work all around Europe. He is one that you definitely want to hear from. Nick is also a drone pilot, so if you have technical questions about flying a drone, Nick is the one to ask. He started his filmmaking career in 2015 while participating in a film festival in Italy, and he is amazing. He's passionate about storytelling and he's all about shedding light on diverse perspective through his films. All right, Nick is on. You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Nick Wambugu. Hope you can all hear me. Yes, my name is Nick Wambugu from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a filmmaker, film producer, film director, cinematographer, a drone pilot, pretty much everything. But all in all, I'm a storyteller. I identify myself as a creative and a storyteller. Yeah, so I'm happy to be invited today for this forum, and ideally I'll be speaking about the business of storytelling. This is turning passion, turning passion into profit. And on this topic, I'll be pretty much speaking about how there's pretty much so different ways and many ways which as a storytellers we can change, or rather transform your passion into profit. Because most of us ideally come into this world or come into this industry or business through passion. But I'll be kind of speaking heavily mostly on how creatives slash storytellers, how they should navigate through their contracts, and also how those specific contracts can later on create a sustainable income through what we create and what we make and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, broadly, as I speak as a storyteller, of course, I'll be speaking from my end, as a filmmaker. But ideally, it's pretty much all, as long as you're a storyteller, whether you paint, whether you're an artist, any form of creative, as long as you're a storyteller, I mean, it pretty much applies. Difference will be just maybe in specific fields. I will start by delving straight into contracts. And contracts pretty much a legal binding, or rather a legal agreement between you and someone else. In this case, mostly in our cases, is normally it can be you and your producer, for example. If you're a film crew or a film cast, it can be, in other cases, maybe if it's not the producer, it can be you and the client, or you and and any other body, or anything of the sort. Ideally, someone who's giving you work, or someone who you're working together. And so, I mean, when I think about history of contracts, it's pretty much how we, especially as a storytellers slash creatives, we come from a point of, since most of our work comes from a very passionate, point of view. This is from an emotional side, so we end up bypassing contracts, making of contracts. We end up bypassing reading contracts, There's always a feeling, it's pretty much our industry, a feeling whereby contracts seem to be, it's not something good or something like when you start a conversation with contracts and stuff like that, it already feels like, it's coming from bad faith. But ideally, contracts, what they normally do, they pretty much they protect both parties. In this case, for example, as filmmakers, as a director, as a as a cinematographer, as a producer, it pretty much protects you and your producer, you and your client, in case of anything, in case anything happens and stuff like that. Also, good thing with contracts is they kind of stipulate, or rather, can I say it? They kind of tell exact what you should be doing or what you do in a project, and they pretty much elaborate and stimulate your operations, how to work, when to work, all those kind of stuff. This is, of course, case in point, mostly in our world, whereby we are in film crews, we are in sets, filming and stuff like that. And contracts, I mean, also, as much as they shouldn't feel, anytime you're going into a contract, it shouldn't feel like it's something, like it's like there's a gun to your head about it. No, contracts, I mean, ideally, I would say it's a way of someone letting you know this is what you're working on. It's ideally someone letting you know, this is in case a producer, a client, or whatever it is, trying a legal way, trying to show how we are engaging in a project or anything else. And good thing with this is, the good thing with contracts is also you can be in a situation, or you have also the rights to either amend, if, say, for example, you're reading your contract, and maybe some of the clauses you don't agree with, or you can always suggest from your end, maybe could this change, could this move here and stuff like that. So by the time you are on a project with this specific body, this specific person, and you've signed each other's contract, I mean, it should always feel like it's coming from a fair deal from both parties. And with contracts, besides protecting you in those instances, now, because I just wanted, first of all, to show you how, by first of all protecting yourself in a project, how now through that, with the same kind of contract, it also now helps you in navigating in through your finances, through your rights and stuff like that. So this is, I would say, now with the contracts, once you've discovered what the engagement you have with the project, contracts will help you now formulate how you're getting resources, how you're getting paid in different kind of projects. So, for example, and also like how to fairly, I would say, to fairly, distribute, the ratings of a project, of a film, or something of the sort. So I would give like examples. Say, for example, in films, by having a contract in films, so whether it's coming from, say, a film producer, for example, or a production house in that case, everyone who signs a contract is through the production house or through the producer. Is, first of all, you are binding yourself to a situation whereby you are accepting, this is the kind of pay that I want to do this is the kind of, in exchange of my skills, or in exchange of something you've provided, say, for in a set or something of the sort. And by having that, it kind of protects your finance, how it comes through, even if, say, for example, you're in a situation or projects whereby you're not paid upfront, for example, or for example, in projects whereby it's a film and funding is coming as the film is ongoing. So you're able to protect yourself from being in a situation whereby when the project is finally out, anyone or the owners of the project can dictate much later on what you deserve or what you get and stuff like that. Or for example, if a project fails in between and maybe most likely it's not your fault, you didn't have anything to do with it. It can be even forces that are beyond, say for example, a specific project. Say for example, it's say a loan or a funder had maybe just pulled out. By having signed that contract, it kind of protects you from a situation whereby that project, if it ever makes money, you are in a situation whereby you pretty much get what you deserve from maybe what you signed or what was agreed in terms of sharing. And for us creatives and storytellers, sometimes why this is very important is and besides the commercial jobs that we do, which maybe sometimes they come from advertising agencies, they're just commercial, whereby you don't own any rights thereafter once it's out. Most of our work also especially as storytellers, comes from doing passion projects amongst ourselves, or having just collaborators in your project. And I think one of the best practices is always, however small a passion project is, one of the best practices is always have something on paper, something signed, something an agreement or anything of the sort. Because some of these passion projects may be small or maybe big, they are done well, done from a point of love and all of that kind of stuff. Then when it's being pitched to someone, it always sounds, it's a zero production, come help us and stuff like that. But much later, these productions end up raking big and becoming big time. And it's at that point, for like the producer of the films, they might, the producers of the film, they might end up taking say for example, all the credits, all the rights, all the money. Yet some of the most hardworking people for that production to reach where it is are people who are on that set. So that's one of my biggest lessons as a filmmaker, whereby I decided even the small passion projects, you always have some kind of paperwork. It even helps you to it helps you and the people you're working with to be in a situation whereby even they can help market or even sell or distribute your film on behalf of you, because everyone kind of feels they have ownership to the film. So that's a very, very, very important aspect in contracts. And I mean, in the same kind of contracts, with helping in providing equitable ways of sharing resources or sharing money, by maybe your skills or something of the sort. Also, most times as guys, we find ourselves in situations whereby we work in projects whereby a project maybe doesn't have enough funding, doesn't have enough resources, or doesn't have enough money, at least, to cater what someone should be, maybe they are red cards or something of the sort. But, probably it has just something to keep the production to go on, pretty much like production money. There are just different ways of, by not having, say, for example, resources that could, a check that, you're just given in exchange of your skill. There are just different ways of how you can much later get income from what you've worked on. This is, you can be in a situation whereby you decide, say, for example, to sign rights. Maybe signing IP rights. So, for example, I'm a film editor, or I own a lot of equipment, and there's a film that needs specific equipment that they don't have maybe money to rent it. I may decide to give them, say, a production X company in exchange of rights to a specific production or a specific project or film. And in that way, it's a mutual, it's a win-win situation whereby I, as the owner of the equipment, for example, I have rights to a specific film, which, say, for example, it becomes big and it has like, big returns and stuff like that. Whereas the production company, they will be able to get equipment and do their project. So it's a win-win situation whereby now, for me, for example, someone who owns an equipment company, a rental company, for example, I am guaranteed, once the film is out, it's something like I have invested in something that it can be, say, for example, residuals or specific rights, depending how it's negotiated between you and the producer. And so you'll have, sustainable income much later, even in times whereby you don't have like the daily projects. And this is just a way of, because we all coming from, most storytellers come from collaborators point of view, making these creative and artistic projects. It becomes a win-win situation to both parties, whether the producers, who maybe they might not have enough resources, or guys who have the skill, but they might want to extend the term with rights. So yeah, that's a very important thing about contracts. Checking the rights, how you want to own it, and it's all stipulated in the contract. And I mean, it's always very tiring, and it might feel lazy to read contracts. They might be 200 pages, whatever pages it is, but that by just giving that time, it's pretty much a part of production. By giving that time to read your contracts and stuff like that, they might help you and save you much later in life, even after maybe you are out of the industry or out of the game or anything. So the same thing with we have residuals, for example, in film, whereby performers, actors, they can benefit from films. For example, if something changes with the film besides the maybe intended purpose. Say, for example, you do a film, then the intended purpose was cinema. Then after cinema, something comes up in the film, has been bought by a broadcaster or streaming sites or anything of the sort. So performers, actors, and everyone, especially involved in performing, you are able to be in a situation whereby you can be able to be getting something, income, revenue from this situation, because the film might be big or the film might be, for example, timeless. And so whether it plays 50 years from now, 10 years from now, you're still raking from your skill, from your performance. So yeah, I feel, in my journey as a filmmaker, and especially this year, most of the things I've been discussing with people and also learning a lot is the whole area of contracts, and also how literally contracts, just by reading a contract, fighting for your rights, knowing your rights, they can be an extreme source of sustainable income as a storyteller, besides working from project to project, film to film. You can have like income that is generated over time, including there are some contracts I know in specific countries. I was speaking with someone, and I don't know which country is it in Europe, whereby even some rights can go even to fourth generation, four of your kids. And so that's the power of having, knowing about contracts, and fighting for your rights in a contract, and making sure the contracts is, you feel the contract, you don't feel like you've been put aside or anything of the sort. Yes, so yeah, that's pretty much my contribution to how contracts, and rights can, in our industry as storytellers, can help create sustainable revenue. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was so educative. So
Thank
educative,
you.
talking about navigating contracts and always having something on paper, fighting for your rights, and knowing your rights. Thank you so much. So we have a question. Adegoke from Nigeria says, working on a period film, and I've been working tirelessly for some weeks now. Shouldn't a contract cover the pre-production stage? Most contracts are always through principal shoot. Is that right? He asks.
I mean, contracts, I would say, from my practice, contracts can, they can, for example, in a crew, a film has crews from production to post-production to after post-production. These are the distributors and stuff like that. So contracts can come in different levels and different stages in a production. For example, I would say in a film, a director, for example, would be involved. A director and a scriptwriter, a screenwriter, either might be involved in a film from from pre-production stage. So definitely, their contracts covers coming something from pre-production stage, production stage, all the way if they're also involved in post-production stage. Other crew members, their contracts can come in production stage. Say, for example, you are a cinematographer, you are, say, a makeup artist, for example, and maybe you are only needed during only post-production stage. So your contract covers that point. Same with, say, post-production people, the editors and all of that, including even after post-production, whereby you have distributors, whereby you definitely sign contracts with your distributors. We've had cases whereby an owner of a film, giving some distribution rights to distribution companies. So it just depends where at what stage you are in, and what's where your contract kind of covers. What does it cover in either skill wise or your production to the project. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Nick. So there's, another question that continues from Adeguke's question. It says, how can I know my rights as a storyteller slash filmmaker? Are there organizations that state the rights of the different people involved in making a film? And I want to add that not just stating the rights, are there organizations that regulate and ensure that these rights are enacted on set, in production, and in post-production?
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, depending where you are in this world, I believe each specific, say, for example, country has its own set of laws, constitution, set of laws that inside the set of laws, they also there are specific rights, labor rights, film rights in specific jurisdictions. So one of the ways is, I mean, for example, like for me personally, is what I've been trying to do is also trying to read a lot of the rights from a point of film rights here in Kenya, understanding also other rights from other jurisdictions. That's also another way, because sometimes you might be in positions as storytellers. We might be in positions in our countries whereby we are we are given the mandate to help come up, or making the industry much better by coming up with rights, that protect us. So also kind of reading rights from other jurisdictions, kind of, and maybe some mature industries can kind of help you understand what rights you have, because also some of these rights, maybe some might be specific for different countries, but also they are generic and general rights. A storyteller from Russia, a storyteller from Kenya, or a storyteller maybe from Germany, they all have the same rights. They all do the same thing. So by just understanding rights from other different jurisdictions can help you. And ideally, I mean, apart from maybe learning from schools, institutions such as film schools or law institutions, I believe also as storytellers, because also things change and our industry keeps evolving daily. So it's up to us also to kind of every time kind of researching doing a lot of research, the same way we research on our stories and all of that kind of stuff. It's the same kind of energy I feel like we should be doing in rights and just understanding contracts.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Nick.
Thank you.
We have one more question. We have one more
Cool.
question. So, Maurice is asking, to what extent should a contract cover crew in terms of payment, assuming the production gains financial success into the unforeseeable future? That's great.
Cool. Wow, interesting question.
Yeah.
I will put it this way. In a film, for example, there's film X that producer Y has a list of crew, and I believe, or the way it is some films, some crew members might be only involved in a film only for the sole purpose of maybe giving your skill, what you do. So for example, if say you are a makeup artist, or you are you can be a cinematographer or an editor, for example, maybe the only right at that point, maybe unless otherwise, unless it's stipulated or you negotiate to it, but some rights are just in the contract. Ideally, you sign them off just because your skill is only needed for a specific thing or a specific stage. Unless in situation whereby, for example, you are exchanging your skill to not maybe something money wise, and maybe now you are exchanging your skill. Say for example, you are an editor, or you're a makeup artist, or a cinematographer, and maybe you can't be afforded, and you can come with a situation whereby you can negotiate. For example, do I get half of my red card in exchange of I have rights to this? So those are the kind of situations I would say for crew members, how they get into signing of rights in the contracts. Some crew members, for example, they might be in situations whereby you are, for example, you are a cinematographer, and you might be in a situation whereby you might help in marketing the film or distributing the film. So that's something also you can negotiate. For example, okay, I can be paid for my cinematography skills, for example, but I can help you you can invest in the film through distribution or through marketing, or maybe in another way, maybe putting in money as an executive producer. Then with that, I feel your rights become more, you are able to have more rights in a specific project because you have given more. So it's more of a, I would say it's more of a balance by just understanding what kind of, first of all, project you're doing, and also trying to oversee where can the project go. But at the end of the day, as I said, it's also contracts is pretty much a way of negotiating between you and the person who's given you the contract. So you can always come to an agreement whereby you have amended stuff, you have changed stuff and all of that. And good thing with contracts is also you are not ever forced to sign a contract. So for example, if you ever feel like you are not compensated in a specific way, the way you feel, you can always not sign a contract, and life moves on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I was clear with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so
Uh-huh.
Thank you so
No
much
problem.
for sharing with us, Nick. That was so insightful. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. Thank you. Our next keynote speaker will be coming up. Please make welcome the tenor actor David. He's a creative director, video editor, a two-time award recipient, and he has contributed to the growth and success of renowned organizations all around the world, including Olam's, World Bank, Ministry of Agriculture, Peace Commission, Vertebra, Christian Aid Fund, PLAN, UNFPA, and 1 Million Teachers. He is an amazing documentary photographer, cinematographer, filmmaker, and storyteller. Please welcome Eternal Actual.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you all hear me? All right. I don't want to take much time. Thank you for that introduction, and I'm super glad to be here amidst a lot of creatives like us. So, like she has said, my name is Uteno Archer David. I went to Ahmadu Bello University. I studied physics, but years after, found myself becoming a storyteller. So what I'm about to do today is more of the real me, who I am from the inside of me. I want to share the truth about what I do, what is supposed to be, and how people are supposed to do it. So the mastering the arts of storytelling for social impact and advocacy. So I started my journey into storytelling in 2017. Um, at that time, I started shooting in church. I loved cameras, wanted to just be a part of something that works. So I joined the church media team and then started shooting church services, events, and all of that. But it got boring for me. I needed something what much more. But I didn't have the access to my personal camera. So after school in 2017, I saved up after service, came back home, bought my first camera, a Canon 550D. A lot of cinematographers or equipment people will know how that is. So without much experience, I was self-taught, YouTube, and jumped into a tour with some of my friends to three West African states, precisely Togo, Benin Republic, and then Ghana. But I had a camera in my hand, but without knowing the power of what to do, no plan, no understanding of ISO, shutter speed, and I captured rubbish all through my 2 weeks of traveling around West Africa in those three states. But while I was doing that, my friends kept asking me, what do you want to be known for? You're a photographer. And I kept telling them, I don't know. I'll just keep shooting. At that time, I was shooting weddings and events just for the money. But I know deep inside me, I wanted something much more. I needed something that would contribute to shaping my country, shaping people, because I have been doing that in my only two way while I was in the university. So along the line, I jumped into documenting, natural activities, people, daily lives, and then for me, it was something that moved me, So yeah, I'll go straight. What is storytelling? Introduction. Stories have the power to change the world. Yeah, we have heard a lot of stories. In fact, gossips are stories. If you go on all social medias, the trending things that are really people really pay attention to are gossips. And what are these gossips? They are stories. And now I'll give you a few insights to what we're doing or to what we're saying. Now, I have some facts from a site I drew, few weeks back while I was researching for this summit. There are about 5,500 films produced in Africa per year. Yeah, 5,500 films produced in Africa per year. And then 3,400 of these films are from West Africa. 5,500, 3,400 are from West Africa, and then 1,005 of these movies are from East Africa. Just imagine the wealth of stories that are going around. And then, the majority of the stories going around in West Africa are, they said, most of them are from the local low budget film industries like those Igbo films, Yoruba films. But I'm just trying to tell you that how people are invested in storytelling, how people are invested in sharing and documenting things. Yeah, so stories have the power to change the world, and it has been doing that. A lot of amazing documentary photographers and cinematographers have done great films. Films like, if you have watched um, the man who harnessed the wind. I watched that movie and I saw the power of documentary. I saw the power of how people can change their world by just telling stories. That film, if you've not watched it, you should try and watch it. Now, this photo right here you're seeing was captured in Kaduna, where I reside. There's a popular market known as Panteka. I went there on a research because I'm a climate activist, and I was doing a research around recycling of plastic waste and metallic waste. And then this guy jumped into my frame. And then in my head at that time, I captured this. And the story was, who is this guy to a lot of people when I was doing my edit? To some people, this guy is a loser. He's selling roasted dried dates and tiger nuts. To some people, this guy is a loser. To some people, this guy is a victor. To his family, this is the source through which he feeds them. So stories, it's dependent on how you present them. Like our first speaker said, the narrative in which you present them, it determines how far it's going to go. So I'll move to my slide 2. So we're talking about social impact. Now, what is social impact? Social impact can be defined as the effect on people and communities that happens as a result of action or inaction, an activity, project, or program, or policy. A lot of us in Nigeria, I'll use that as a case study, we fold our arms and think that things will just take shape on its own without us taking action, without us being involved in a particular program, without us being involved in a particular activity, and we fold our arms thinking things would take shape. But no, social impact here means that there are things we need to do to harness or propel things to happen. And then this is where storytelling comes in. So if you want to achieve social impact, if you want to be a part of something that works, you need to take action. And these actions are in different form. So in terms of filmmaking, documentary photography, or storytelling, you need to take action. You need to document stories. You need to tell these stories so that people can see, and then you move them into taking action so that things can change, things can happen, and then policies can be changed. So moving forward, what is advocacy? Remember, our topic is storytelling for social impact and advocacy. Gladly, the goal of social advocacy is to promote inclusion, encourage and initiate social change. It aims to empower people to exercise their rights and to enhance their well-being. This is well explanatory, but I'll use this story, this photo on my slide as an example. A lot of us here might not know, but this is Toka Magbaro, a popular film director, award-winning film director. In October, this photo was taken by me in October 2020 during the NSAS protest in Kaduna. I happened to be in Kaduna, and I went out with my camera and I saw Toka, and I was like, this is interesting. If a whole filmmaker, a popular one for that matter, will come out and do this, then it's worth doing. I had a video of him, interviewed, and he was talking. Why? He knew the power he had. He knew how important his voice was, and he came out. So the goal of advocacy actually is to promote inclusion. The protest in 2020 was all about ending police brutality and, the NSAS, all of things. So people were fighting, they were oppressed. They needed to be liberated. And then when they came out, people needed to document this story. And then for me, I have a slogan that says, if it was not documented, then it never happened. So, with this, there is proof that yes, a certain time, in Nigeria, Kaduna State precisely, there were young people who came out fighting for their right to be for their voices to be heard. And that is the importance of advocacy. Your stories should advocate for something. It could be for rights, it could be for well-being, it could be for inclusion, it could be, for for the widespread of poverty or injustice and all of that. So this is what advocacy is all around. So going forward, storytelling for social impact and advocacy. Storytelling for social impact and advocacy is the strategic use of narratives to raise awareness, inspire action, and drive positive change. So what is the essence of your story? The essence of your story is to what? Drive positive change. And then the narrative in which you bring that story is what matters most. Our first speaker and second speaker touched a little around these things. So whatever you're saying, whatever picture you're putting out there, whatever film you're putting out there should be strategically placed. The narrative should be strategic. Now, this photo here was taken also in Kaduna by me at the Central Market in Kaduna during the cash crunch. Yes, when there was this money issues in Kaduna, and then we went around interviewing women and petty traders, and then turned while I was doing my thing, saw this lady selling, bean cake. They call it kuli kuli in Nigeria. And, with her phone, she wasn't happy, but she needed to come out. At this point, these traders were not interested in, bank transactions. But they had to adapt. They took it. Now, the narrative here is not to show that she's selling something like this. No, the narrative here for me was resilience. She was out. No matter what the economy was saying, the problem of no cash, she came out, she was willing, and you could see her face, So for some people, the narrative here may be negative. They might just want to show that this woman is suffering, and this is what she's selling, and this is how she makes her money. No. For me, the narrative here was, this is a young woman, resilient, and despite the odds, she came out and she wants to make a living. Possibly she has 4 or 5 children at home. Possibly she has a mother, old woman at home, and they need this money. She came out despite, the odds to make a living. So the narrative is very important. I'll move to my next slide. Identifying your message and audience. Yeah, this amazing photo was taken by me in Jigawa in 2022 during the World Bank project and FMAN project for farmers that are farming wheat. This was a very popular farmer in Jigawa. He farms one of the biggest. He has one of the biggest farms in Jigawa, and then these are kids also in Jigawa. Now, what is the now? What is my message here? Now, this is a farmer and these are kids in the village. They are happy. And then farming here is productive because, a group of experts were brought to Jigawa to train these farmers on sustainable farming. And then after farming, this was their harvesting seasons. I guess this man made over 200 and something bags of harvest, and then these are kids. When we went around, documenting stories, they saw us and they were happy. Now, the message here is about happiness. It's about victory. It's about success. It's about poverty alleviation, because these people have found a way to sustainably farm what? Wheat. And it is very productive for them, So the message here and your audience is very important in your storytelling journey. And then also this way, women. Now this story here is very important for me because every frame for me is a story. Now this photo at my left was what gave me an award with the World Food Program. While we were on the journey in Jigawa, while they were harvesting, we were passing. I saw these women who were farming. Now my narrative here, the psychology here was not just to capture women, doing farm jobs and all of that. No, the narrative here was, for me, is nobody is talking about women in agriculture. These are aged women who are contributing massively, to the agricultural sector, and they were doing these things, singing happily, making fun of, just having fun, and then, bagging these things, happily. And then I talked to myself and said, how many women are like this in different regions in Africa? This story needs to be shared. These people need to be seen, and then their story need to be told. And then in the other end here, this was a woman that, she was just scrapping the remains from the wheat farm, and then possibly she's going home to use them for food. And then for me here, it was not a story of a suffering woman. It's a story of a resilient woman. If you look at it closely, if you zoom in, you'll see that she has a baby in her back, at her back, and then she has a calabash in her head, of the grains she has fetched from the remains that were, left in the farm. So this is a story of resilience, a story of perseverance, and a story of what? Of victory. Despite all odds, she decided to be alive and to make a living from whatever comes of it. So the power of and understanding the power of stories and the psychology of storytelling. So it's a matter of angle and narrative, compelling narratives. Also, these are all narratives. The first photo here was taken in during the 2020 NSAS protest, and then this was the second photo was of a young teenage boy who became a metal worker. They recycle metal waste, turn them into ovens, refrigerators, in that same market, in Panteca recycling market. And then the last photo here is a story that just tells about the green nature of of Kaduna, where they have lots of great farmers, good farming conditions also. On our way to document a story, I saw this site, a fishing boat, a pond of rice, where they farm rice, and I decided to take that story. But in this story, this photo, I called it life and death, because in this place there is a sinking boat already in here, and there is one that is still alive, and around it you have green nature, which shows that in this place there is life and death. Some things will die, some things from that death will come alive. So that's my narrative around this. So the next one, also a compelling narrative. These two photos are very amazing photos. The first one is about a village kid where we went to Jaba, to document about water scarcity and all of that. So I saw this kid and he was drinking water, and I told him that, can I take his photo? We asked for consent, and then took this photo. The aim of this photo was not to show that the boy is suffering or anything, but you could see the settings of the place. It's an amazing story that promotes the importance of water. Train up a child, when you train a child, you train a community, so water is important. And then when I saw this scene, I decided that this story was going to make it. And then, Canon called me up for this photo, and they bought this photo and they used it for one of their publications. It's an amazing photo. And then on this other end is a story about, environmental pollution, how plastics and improper waste disposal is polluting our rivers, killing. Now, I took this photo after in 2022 after a flood in Kaduna State, and then I went out to document stories, and then I realized that this was happening, and then the government were not aware. Possibly they were, but maybe people were not telling this story. So I went, and then the river, the entire space, the entire community was polluted because the river got filled up, flushed back, the whole waste back into the community, into houses, into churches, into mosques. And nobody was telling these stories. The fishermen in this community could not even fish because there were no fish in the river, because everything was polluted. To the rivers, to the community, to everything was polluted. So I needed to talk about this story, to call the necessary people that could make something happen around this community. And that was why I documented this story. Next is, the first photo here was one of the photos I took on my tour in Ghana. This is Cape Coast in Ghana, but why did I put these two stories together? There's a narrative about Africa that we have been working on, about we telling our stories, despite the fact that, yes, we have cities. Now, I did the first photo versus the second photo, with the narrative that, yes, we have pollution, we have everything like this, but we still have other areas that are clean. And fruitful, and then a lot of good activities are happening. So these are all around narratives. So rather than telling bad stories, you could choose to tell good stories. But that doesn't mean that the bad things are not happening, but you should just know the way you could project these stories and to the audience you're projecting it to. So I'm going straight now into elements of storytelling. So our first and second speaker have touched around this. We talked about compelling narratives. We talked about characters, people who you are filming, and then we talk about plots. We talk about settings, and we talked about conflict. Now these are very important elements to telling a story. That was why I used this young girl in this photo. Went to Castina to document a story about women. HHID, household income generation, found this young girl who wasn't happy, and interviewed her, got to know, and then she was out of school, and took a photo of her, and then she's an interesting character in my story while we were documenting that story. So in all of these elements are very important. You need to find conflict. What is the actor or your protagonist fighting against? The settings. Where is the story happening? Like I said, this was taken in Castilla, and then the plot, the scenes that are happening one after the other, and then we have a character, and then compelling narratives. And then storytelling. In storytelling, there are very important things you need to know. You need to have vivid imagery. Our second speaker talked about equipment and all of that. In as much as people don't really pay attention to it, but it is really important with the competition and type of qualities that are out there. If you really want to get proper engagement, you need to make sure that your image is good, to lighting, to quality, then emotional appeal, how your stories, relate, how people accept, how it moves with their emotions. So the essence of storytelling or photos is actually to stir emotions, So if your stories are not triggering any emotions, then you need to check your technique or your story. Then it has to be relatable. I can't be here and tell a story about Russia because I'm not in Russia. I can't relate to what is happening. I can only have an idea of what is happening. So your stories need to be relatable. You need to know what is happening. You need to, in a way, be in that space to tell the proper story. So it has to have vivid imagery. It has to have emotional appeal. It has to be relatable. So a very good story, a very good attention to the technique, to your techniques will help, captivate your audience. Then authenticity, like I said, I can't be in Nigeria and tell a story about Russia. No, it has to be authentic, right? So this was a story we took about plastic recycling and pollution in Kaduna. I did this with a fellow from one organization. They were documenting around this. So we went around looking for people who do plastic recycling, buy plastics and all of that. So your story needs to be original, so it has to come from a place where you have prior experience or you are even staying. It has to be real. If not, your audience won't trust you. People watching your or buying into your idea won't trust you possibly in your next story. Then distribution. Our second speaker also talked about distribution. Now, why I chose this was a photo I also took during NSAS. If NSAS didn't create the network of distribution they had at that time, I tell you, the campaign wouldn't have survived, but there was vast, campaign around every social media network, so they chose the right distribution channel because people could participate physically, people could participate online. So it is what you choose for your distribution that really, that can help amplify the voice of whatever you're trying to talk about. It could be, you know, policy. It could be, you know, about climate change. It could be around, you know, human trafficking. So whatever platform you choose, you need to choose the right distribution channel. And right here, I just gave an example. You could use Instagram, LinkedIn for starters, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. You could use any of these platforms as your first before you can go into, you know, possibly have funding for paid, you know, distribution. The collaborations and partnership, it is very important. You know, in my first days of my storytelling, I thought, you know, I could do it alone. You know, I was working alone, and you know, I was slow. You know, I wasn't getting the traction I needed. In fact, I had to learn how to volunteer. That was where partnership came into play. So as an onboarding storyteller, don't think everything is about money. Yeah, money is important, but I did free gigs. I went to organizations, wrote my intention to volunteer with them, you know, and you know, they gave me audience. I showed my skill, and then 2-3 of them called me back, hired me for a gig or for a project, and we went on the field. So you need to collaborate with people, you need to partner with people, you need to volunteer for free. If you need to, you need to do personal projects, so you know, you can build your portfolio. And so partnering with like-minded organization influencers can help amplify the reach and impact of your storytelling. That's well said. So after all of this, after packaging your whole story and distributing, you need to evaluate. You need to evaluate every step you take in your storytelling journey. You know, evaluation is key. You need to get feedback. You need to hear what's going on. You need to hear the impact of what you are doing. You know, I'll always use the NSAS protest, you know, story. You know, what they did, you know, moved policies. It changed a lot of things in Nigeria, right? So I'm sure at that time people didn't evaluate, but some of us were evaluating. Okay, at the end of this, what did this result to? So for whatever story you're telling, you should be able to evaluate at every step. What is my result? What am I getting? Do I need to change strategy? Do I need to do something else? You know, it's going to help in your storytelling journey. Now, like I said, when I captured the story on the flood and plastic pollution in Kaduna, and we started making noise around it. 2 organizations I partnered with saw the story and picked it, you know, and they wrote to the government of Kaduna State, KEPA, all the people in charge of environmental waste. So for me, that story was a win when I went to capture the river with plastic pollution, because it moved policy. It brought people to action. The necessary organizations, the heads that were supposed to take care of these things, we got their attention, and then they moved it, they swung into action, started looking for how to clean up, started looking how to place policies around the community that will, you know, properly manage waste, you know. So measuring impact. So that story brought me to this, and then I saw that yes, it was useful, the story was, you know, impactful, and all of that. So my next is, you know, continuous improvement. You need to learn to, you know, improve. When you get your feedback, you need to learn to improve. When you do any story, when you shoot any photo, you show it to people who are advanced, you know, they could advise. And then when you put it out there, pay attention to what people are saying, pay attention to what they are saying, how they are saying it, what you need to improve on. You know, you need to continuously improve, because these communities, there is a way you engage them. You know, this was me and a boy in one of the communities. I shot a story in Katsina State, and when I went back, they were all happy to see me. Why? Because they saw that the story about them I gave out there was positive, and it brought positive change to their community, and then I was always welcome back into that community. So you need continuous improvement. You need to improve in your storytelling skill, your strategy, and everything you're doing around your storytelling. So in conclusion, storytellers must be careful when framing and communicating stories in the public. It is essential to keep in mind that we are not the saviors of an individual or community. Still, we are catalysts through which partners and participants can gain knowledge, obtain resources, and find a network to support from people and the environment necessary to do the necessary. So like I said, as a storyteller, when you go into a community because you're doing a social work or you're advocating for something, you don't project yourself as their savior. In fact, they might ask you for some things. There's a rule that you shouldn't promise them, right? But you should tell them you will look into it. Don't project yourself as the savior. Don't make them look as the victim and all of that. That's what they call poverty porn. There's how you project people that make them look like victims. Like if you're dealing on cases of gender-based violence, rape and all of that. Some of those people won't even come out plainly. They don't want their faces to be shown. So you need to learn how to strategically tell these stories, right? So you don't project yourself like you are the almighty, you have come to save them and alleviate them from their poverty, but you need to find way in which you make them know that they are the ones to do these things together. You have just come to help, in achieving this goal. Yeah. So at best, storytelling has the power to move people to action, inspire hope, influence connection and change, and highlight the strengths and dignities that can be found within communities and humanity at large. At worst, stories can sensationalize, stereotype, marginalize, and cause harm to those we serve. So we need to be careful how, where, and why we tell our stories. If we're doing stories for impact, you need to know how to do it. You need to be sure of your strategy. You need to be sure of the goals. You need to be sure of the people you are working with. You don't work with any kind of people. They are strategic people who are in the space. I can't bring a music producer to work with me on set for a documentary work. He might have experiences, but he might not be able to, uh, do some of the things, get the sounds right, get the imagery right and all of that. Yes. So that's why we need to work with the right people so that we get this thing. So when a story is properly told, it's going to stir the right emotions, it's going to give you the right feedback and all of that. So with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. Wait for questions.
Thank you so much, Uchenna. Your passion is so palpable and contagious. Thank you so much. We have a question for you. Well, from Bauchi, Nigeria, wants to know, how do I build a story? I am a photographer, he says. I shoot mostly landscapes and wildlife, but I want to transit from just shooting for beauty to telling stories with my shots. How do I start?
Perfect. So and I'm glad, I love this story, right? Recently I have been finding a way to 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 um to house my physics, because I did a degree in physics and then I am now a creative, right? I have been finding a way to marry these two together to go advance in academics. And then I recently found a course in biological photography and imaging in the UK, in a university in the UK. Now, what does this course do? Now, responding to you as as a landscape and wildlife photographer, if you're in Nigeria, nobody is talking properly about wildlife, and our wildlife is going extinct, right? To the insects, to the small animals, to the big ones. If you go to our zoos, they're almost dying off. Nobody is properly documenting what's happening in our wildlife. So you're still in the space. All you just need to do is get your why and your aim. Why do I want to document this wildlife? Who are the people that I want to channel my message to, right? Like, I'm deciding to go into biological photography because I want to relate my photography with science communication. Now, I have an experience in photography, but I want to see how I can marry it to tell scientific stories. And that's where Nat Geo Wild comes in. There are programs on Nat Geo Wild you can apply for that teaches you as a photographer, most especially landscape and wildlife, to how you can start telling proper stories. You can even start from the simplest of, birds that are going extinct. You can start from our communities that are going through droughts. There are opportunities in this. Go. I don't know where you're based, but if you're based in the north, maybe far north, where there is drought, start taking photos of the land where drought is eating it up. If you're in the south, you can start telling stories around how oil spillage is affecting the lands and killing the aquatic life. Now that is a very sensitive story, and just few people are telling it. It could either be in film, it could either be in photography. So these are very good areas you can look into. All you need is your why and how. I hope that answers the questions.
Absolutely. That is for sharing that. And thank you for an absolutely beautiful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're moving on to our next. We are going to be hearing from Tiger Firebirds. She's a writer, film producer, skill facilitator, trainer, storyteller, scriptwriter, creative director, and founder. You're welcome.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so I don't have any presentation slides. I'm just going to basically share some of my thoughts and from my heart and my notes generally. So I just want to first say thank you, African International Documentary Film Festival Foundation, for this amazing platform for us to share about impactful storytelling. So I'm Tiger Fire Rose, a writer, filmmaker, and storyteller. Even though I studied microbiology, I have a certificate to prove it. All I truly know how to do is tell stories in any format, medium, or way. I live, breathe, dream in story. Even my dreams are wild story plots. I enjoy the entire creation process, and I love seeing it through from inception till it gets on the big screen. I've worked on various African Magic, Showmax, Netflix, and Amazon shows in various capacities, either as writer, producer, or consultant. And I currently have a movie on Amazon Prime called To Freedom. And I'm very honored today to be sharing with you about cultural riches, infusing African heritage into storytelling. So, um, in my in my decade of being in this industry, one thing I've realized is words are very powerful, right? Don't let anyone deceive you. Your words are powerful. Your story has the power to change a generation in whatever direction. And it's going to be either positively or negatively. The choice is yours. And how do I know this? I'm an advocate for authentic African storytelling, and it happened because I was influenced by words very, very early when I was just starting out, right? I came across an ancient African proverb that blew my mind. And like words spoken so long ago by a random African ancestor have managed to shape me thousands of years later. And this is the proverb, right? I don't know, some of us might have heard it, some of us might know it, right? And it says, until the lion learns to speak, every tale will glorify the hunter. So I'm going to say it again. Until the lion learns to speak, every tale will glorify the hunter. And it just made so much sense, right? Because for the longest time, most of what we grew up consuming was like Western culture. And it really just told tales of, sweet romance and action heroes, pew, 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 and like corrupt government officials that get justice because they intentionally painted a system that works, right? And this somehow became like the standard or the culture to portray, even when we as Africans are telling our own stories. And that just shouldn't be, right? We've been so deeply influenced by other cultures that even our stories aren't told from an African perspective and don't hold the level of truth and authenticity that they deserve. Our characters don't give African reactions. They are giving African man with foreign behavior reactions, or an African man in his country facing foreign problems, right? So I'm grounding a lot of this storytelling in movies because I'm a filmmaker. That's my major medium of storytelling. So forgive me for the documentaries, documentarians, and the photographers and all of them. Storytelling is storytelling. We are all storytellers. So all stories are human stories, right? And there are only about 5 to 7 basic stories in the world. So basically, they are saying that there's no story that hasn't been told. What's different is your own perspective on the story. And like the amazing speakers before me have all rightly said about stories, authenticity is key, right? So I've watched now, you've brought your trailer, your blockbuster trailer, and you've given me a promise, right? You're an African making a movie. So awesome. As a foreigner, I'm like, oh my God, something different. Let me dive in, right? And then I've come to enjoy your perspective as a foreigner, but what I'm seeing is a knockoff of my reality. I won't be drawn to you. There won't be any connection. I'm just like, what is going on here? This was not the promise. I've been so shocked, right? It's like when you go to a Chinese restaurant and instead of giving you ramen noodles and all this Chinese food that we love, they offer you maybe jollof rice with vegetables in it. You're like, no, 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 no. That's not right, right? That's what we jollof rice is my thing. You can't give me jollof rice and put some vegetables in it and say that all of a sudden it's Chinese rice. It doesn't work that way, right? So the thing is, most people see films, documentaries, whatever it is, they see it as truth, right? And our African romance films still give a Western romance idea, not necessarily how Africans really and truly date and court. Like if I'm going to date a foreigner, maybe an American or Indian, I know what to expect because they are true to their patterns in like all the stories that we've received. But foreigners dating Africans are shocked to their toes because what is portrayed in movies isn't necessarily the ideal African romance. We've done our African men such a great injustice in our movies. They're surprised at how very responsible African men generally are and how they take the role of provider so seriously, even in a relationship, right? Our women are strong, very entrepreneurial, and they are leaders. Generally, in core African culture, women are actually respected and cherished. In the Igbo culture, the Umuada Council of Women are the leaders. Please, I'm in a meeting, please. Sorry about that. We have women kings scattered across history, not just we have women kings scattered across history, not just the Woman King movie that we were given, right? That was just done. We've had like female warriors, women lead wars to get their husbands back from the enemy. These are just like general, not even the warriors. We're talking about the women that just come together and are like, you know what? They've taken our men. How about we go and fight this war and bring our men back home, right? So these are strong women that we have in history and in culture. And this, so as African women, we come from a strong lineage of strong women who are audacious, right, and who have done these audacious things. But it doesn't show in our storytelling, right? A lot of times, our women are portrayed as weak, confused, they don't really know what they're doing, because the stories have not been grounded in culture, right? So we have strong women, but these are not the stories we're telling. Even our modern day women, infusing this truth of these strong women will give us an idea into what African women are truly like, right? And if we're being honest, the Western world has run out of stories, right? You don't need a strong storytelling background to know that with all the remakes, retakes, part five, and about that, my network keeps this thing. Sorry about that. The Western world has run out of stories, so you don't need a strong storytelling background to know that with all the remakes, retakes, part five, and unending franchises, whereas we as Africans are an untapped resource, and it seems everyone knows it except us. We're like that child in all the high school movies who is beautiful but has no idea or is too shy to fully become and feels the need to emulate the cool kid or the most popular kid, whereas we're the coolest kid in school, right? The average African knows about New York City, knows about Hollywood, and knows about the White House and a bit of its operations, but we can't say the same for us. The power of media on owning your story is the world begins to believe your way is the way, when we all know that there are many ways into the marketplace. Like my Yoruba people will say, "Onokon waja." There are many ways into the marketplace, right? So if I had the chance to go around and I ask what sort of stories you want to tell, of course we'll all say, "Oh my God, I want to tell authentic African stories," right? But before we go into it, a lot of what we think are African stories are what I like to call, or what most recently we call poverty porn, like Acho rightly said. The child in the village with no water, the village with no access to education, the oppressed people under the thumb of a dictator, the backward traditional practices still going on, where there's more oppression being shown. Like, you get my drift. Do these stories need to be told? Yes, right? But because these are the only stories now being told, that's what authentic African now means to a lot of people suffering. And it shouldn't be, because that's a very untrue narrative. We are unwittingly helping to fan to flame, because that's what kind of gets you all the applause, gets you the festival tickets, gets you all these many things, right? But how many Africans are actually making waves out there? We have Dr. Olutoye, a world-renowned fetal and neonatal surgeon who successfully operated on an unborn baby. Why don't we have his biopic? Are we waiting for Hollywood to do it? Ben Carson is American. Of course, Hollywood will tell his story multiple times. The Williams sisters are American. It's not Bollywood that is going to tell their story. So why are we waiting for Hollywood to tell our stories for us, right? One of the reasons why you feel a disconnect when you watch the average romantic drama from your country is because the drama being portrayed is not authentic to us, right? The average African isn't really romanced by flowers, even though it's culture that we're trying to appropriate right now. But the average African isn't really romanced by flowers, right? What translate you have to tell us what translates to romance as an African, right? It's not the Western world that tells us what romance is. This is how we romance in our country. One wants to let them know that is what we're doing with our media, like whatever story you're telling, that's what you're doing, you know. Do you know why you are more forgiving of foreign films and you connect more to their stories? It's not necessarily just good storytelling, right? Because what they do is they make you look forward to visiting and immersing yourself in their culture. You may have never met an American, but you have an idea of what an American reaction to a situation would be. Why? Because of all the movies and all the stories that you've consumed. You know why? Do you know one of the reasons why they keep asking us in 2024 about our huts and if we still have water? Because that is what we've told them. We have shared the narrative. That is the story we've shared. So before you get upset with the next foreigner asking you about your tree house, take a deep breath and understand that until we tell the right stories, that's what's going to continue happening, right? So you can't tell an African story with Western culture and say it's authentic. We know you just sold us Bangladesh. And the Africans know that that's not them. The West knows you're trying to imitate them. You're not saying anything new, you're imitating. It's also not by doing the same thing in an indigenous language. An indigenous language film that is not indigenous in story is just you showing us live subtitles on screen. Storytelling is core to us as Africans. It's how we preserve history. It's how we teach our kids morals. It's how we archive our traditions. In Ile-Ife, archaeologists have used Oriki to discover so many ancient landmarks across the city. Oriki is like an oral history of sorts unique to the Yoruba tribe. So what this has shown is we have a unique way of telling stories already. So we should apply the best storytelling techniques, and elevate our African storytelling. How many of us know the story of the seventh Alaafin of Oyo? So the story goes that she was the first transgender woman king, not queen, woman king in Oyo State. And her name is Alaafin Orunpoto in Nigeria. I'm sure right now a lot of you are intrigued and you're like typing furiously away at Google to confirm, like, oh my God, is that true? Is that true? Like, yeah, this was like centuries ago, many centuries ago. History has it that the men refused to let her be king. They told her the only way they'll let her be king is if she's a man, because a woman cannot be king. And she's like, you know what? Give me 7 days. I'll be right back and I'll be a man. And they were like, okay, sure. Like, they were all mocking her and like thinking everything was great. But then she came back and she was really a man, you know. The first is like, oh, okay, show us your upper part. And then she unveils and like, you know, her boobs are flat. There's nothing there. And then they're like, oh, yeah, anything happen like that. And then just like, you know, we need to see the privates and, you know. And then she actually unveiled and she had become a man. She had the private parts of a man. And they were like just flabberwhelmed and just like, you know. And she was a fierce warrior and one of the few Alafins that have died in combat. So that's just one interesting African story that hasn't been told. Or the story of the first woman king in Ife, Oniluwo Bagida, who was so strict and disciplined that after her death, the kingmakers swore never to allow a woman rule as king again. Like, these are stories that are historical, indigenous, and have so many plot twists going on if you delve into like it, if you go into the research of it. Like, how many of us know that the first library or the first university ever recorded was in Africa? Africa's oldest and first university in the world was the Sankore University in Timbuktu, capital of Mali. Where's the movie about? Like, where is it in conversation, right? Our history is an untapped treasure trove. Our current reality is the unique plot twist you need. Once you realize you are telling a human story, but from your own perspective, it changes everything. It liberates you to tell the true African story, one of innovation, perseverance, and audacity. One thing that we have going on for us as Africans, we are audacious. Can we be as audacious in telling our African stories as our culture and stories actually are? We need to learn to celebrate our heroes, not just our shortcomings. We as Africans need to tap into the cultural riches we have and tell our stories our way. And I'm sure you may be wondering how. You can infuse little facts in conversation, banter, instead of having empty page fillers, right? Educate in conversation. The girl from Oyo is upset, right? And says, if Orompoto could do it, why can't I? You know, she's tracing her audacity in her situation to break the norm to her ancestry. Research interesting facts about the tribe you are giving your characters and see it as a huge opportunity to infuse some of it into your story. It can explain why your character is stubborn. It can explain why your villain is wicked. It can explain why the people do the way they do. Do you understand? So you have to ask yourself, what sort of stories are you telling? Why are you telling your story? Is this story for story's sake? Is it for entertainment? Is it for education? You need to know your why, and no matter your why, if you're telling an African story, let it be true to us and our systems. Where do you draw your inspiration from? You don't have to reach too far. There's story all around you. I'm sure things have happened in your family visits or friendships that have made you go, this is wild. This should be a movie. Then write it. The best stories are those grounded in truth. An African telling the story of being stopped by a policeman is completely different from any other culture. We've had African music for centuries now, but the only artists that broke barriers were not the ones that went, oh, I want a gun, I want a shana. The Afrobeat explosion happened because we began to embrace our own style, and it amplified a genre that resonated across the world. That's what our stories should do, amplify us across the world. So do you amplify the negative or positive? When you're telling us your blockbuster, never been seen before story, what are you really saying? I want to tell an authentic story, but does it give us hope? Or is it one of despair of an Africa that will never move? Because as you're showing us the villages in Africa in every story, there are villages in America, their communities just as backward, but you don't know because it's not 90% of their media stories. They give it maybe 5%, 10% max attention. There's a sense of balance, but it favors the positive narrative, right? So you're asking, but if I don't tell it, how will people know? What people exactly? The foreigners so they can swoop in and give aid? Or is it for you to gather your fellow Africans to fix your home yourself? Because we need to even change the narrative, the mind of needing aid and other people to fix our problems as Africans. When you have a family issue, you don't do a movie and then do a big screen and say, this is my family problem, or this is really what's happening, or and you're right, come and help me. That's not what you do, right? What you do is you invite the major family stakeholders to sort it out, right? So your movie is the lens by which the world views us. What's the focal point of your story lens? Who will tell the African story if not you? So whether you japa or not, you are African. Nobody else is going to tell your story for you. I don't get excited necessarily when I hear, oh, Hollywood is going to do an African story. The graphics and acting may be great, but I know the story will never be as authentic as when an African is involved in it, right? As far as I'm concerned, unless it's being told by us, there would always be something missing. One thing that Asians and Bollywood have done is infuse their culture into their storytelling. If it's a futuristic, modern day, or historical piece, their culture always shines through, no matter what it is. You'll see us correcting each other about the other or their own culture, about K-drama, Korean culture. And why this is done, we'll be correcting, no, they don't use this thing, they use chopsticks, they do this, they do that, because we've been effectively educated across all genres. Sometimes we laugh about them, the opening umbrella in the rain, oh, when the love scene was up, oh, the open umbrella, oh, they run into each other on the bridge, but they become statements that we know and we can converse about. But it's hard to point out something I can call an African statement in movies, even if it's in that there must be a greeting and elder scene, or there's always a cousin or extended family member living in the house, no matter how poor you are. Just nuances true to us. So no matter the genre, African is African. Genre should never be an excuse. And it's in the little things, greetings, food, interactions. One beautiful thing I love about our continent is that communal spirit we have. It's not just a Nigerian or Ghanaian or Kenyan thing. It's an African thing that we share. We are communal in culture that even your work people become family somehow. These are nuances that can be infused into your storytelling. It's not just until you throw a little pidgin here or some local dialect here. Give us nuance. How do we treat elders in the community? Use it as a plot device, holding your heroine from taking a certain action or propelling them there. What is taboo in your community? How can that work into your story to increase the drama or escalate the humor? Give us facts in conversation. Create characters aware of their ancestry. Let it drive them or power them. Let's see how culture colors our characters' thinking. Let's see move them forward. Be an obstacle or be a tool for them to use to conquer their big bad. Research, don't skip it. If you're telling a northern story, immerse us in it. Not just in the cinematography, not just that you shot in the cool spots, but in the dialogue and the character development. So until we begin to tell our own stories and tell them well, we will continue to be subpar and play catch up. So instead of embracing, so we will continue to be subpar and playing catch up. So I believe that one of the things that we should work towards actively, right, is to embrace the opportunity to shift the narrative and introduce a new form of storytelling that's unique to us in our authentic African stories. So once again, I just want to say thank you very much to the African International Documentary Festival Foundation for this opportunity to just share and talk about my passion for authentic African storytelling. Thank you.
Tiger Fires, you are inspiring. That was literal. This was the fire up our bombs that we needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For you. Damilare is asking, do you think a lack of the stories we tell here in Nigeria, how do you think that can be mitigated?
Yes, I actually do believe that a lack of in-depth research affects many of the stories that we tell here. And it can actually be mitigated by actually doing the research. You realize that in storytelling, like sometimes it's just vibes. It's like, we have story. Oh my God, it's sweet. Oh, let's do that, right? You don't see the opportunity to ground your character into this culture. You said you're telling the story of an Urobo girl, but nobody wants to go into it and like, okay, Urobo, where did they come from? What's this thing? Even the name you are giving her, why is she named that? Because even as Africans, even naming your name is not just your name, right? My parents' name, literally, my original name, the reason I'm leaving out my original name, my original African name literally means storyteller, like person of story. That's what my name means. And look at me living destiny, living out the name my parents gave me, right? So those are the little nuances that we can even infuse in storytelling, right? Down to naming your characters, giving her a son name, finding out something about her ancestor, finding out that, she's linked to this terrorist or like this person that terrorized the village in the DC. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to change the narrative, Yeah, because we don't do research, we're not wide in our storytelling. We even boxes our storytelling in, right? Because imagine a girl finding out, like, there's this traditional thing that we do in Africa where you investigate your spouse's family. Like when I was getting married to my husband, they sent people to my husband's village to go and investigate what they are. And they also sent people to my own village to go and investigate my family. So, this is an epic story waiting to happen. Because imagine that they've done this research and we realize that maybe my husband comes from the Osu community. That's a problem. Because the Osu people, you think it's one, like it's an even like an abomination sort of thing. And then imagine we're now, so the story plot now is now, okay, we're fighting culture. Are we going to be modern and be like, okay, also was back then, we are no more cults to gods. Right now, yeah. Like, do you understand? So these are the little nuances that we can infuse in storytelling just by research, right? Down to me, down to the tribe. That's everything. That's everything. Please, guys, research. Research is elevated.
Thank you so much, Tiger Fibers. We are, state of origin, and like I'm inspired to do the research, do the work. And I feel like this is the passion we all have about our countries and our continent, and the zeal to do the work, do what needs to be done to tell the full, authentic African story. And you were just the inspiration that we needed.
Thank you so much.
So we are going on to our final speaker for today's summit. We are going to be hearing from Sylvania Kruger for responsible storytelling, and is particularly drawn to exploring stories around death, duality, and the interconnectedness of humanity, the themes that make our stories matter the most. She's a photographer, founder of Stories Matter. Please welcome Sylvania Kruger. You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. I hope you can all hear me. Perfect. So I'm Sonia, and it's truly an honor for me to be here with you today. And yeah, this is Stories Matter, my brand. I would say I understand our world through the stories of people and stories in general. And I started this brand with a mission to document the raw beauty and complexity of human existence in all its diversity. And I desire my storytelling to be an invitation to find yourself in the human story, in our human story, and realizing the profound significance of your own narrative as part of the larger human story. And having been entrusted with so many people's stories across, like, over the last years, that made me dive really deep into the art of responsible storytelling, seeking to value and respect and honor whoever is in front of my lens. So this is how this topic came about. And I'm going to start to tell you a little bit about my story. So one of the most significant things that happened in my story, I would say, that had a huge impact on my work is a very early encounter with death. I lost my dad when I was 14 to cancer, and I just found myself there not really knowing how to navigate this, and not knowing to go where to look for inspiration. And so I developed this curiosity around how can we navigate topics like this as artists. How can we create art for people who are facing these very real things of life? And how can we bring inspiration into that? And that started this whole journey for me as a photographer, as an artist, to explore that question. I found myself in the north of Ghana, in Tamale, in 2019. With a friend, we were just visiting, and we stayed in this little village, and there happened to be a funeral when we were there. So we were invited to the funeral, and I have never seen people dance at a funeral before. I've never seen so many colors at a funeral before, and that really changed everything in my mind about the narrative I had on death. And that led me to asking this question: can death be beautiful? Or actually, this funeral showed me that death can be beautiful. And you can see the funeral down there at the bottom of the guys drumming. And then also the photo next to it is people dancing, which was another funeral that I got to witness last year in Accra in Ghana, a Queen Mom's funeral, which was very special. But basically, this has become like a major part of my work ever since then. So it led me to starting a photo series called Hereafter, asking people around the world the question what death means to them, and seeking to explore life's final chapter across different cultures, religions, backgrounds. So I started documenting different festivals centered around death, like Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, or went to the city of Varanasi, that is the holiest city of India, known for people go to die there, to live their final days there. Went to Orthodox Easter, Fastica in Ethiopia. I'm actually going to go again this year, also in May, which is all about celebrating, obviously, the story of Jesus Christ from death to life, which very much fits into this theme too. And one day I would love to put all of this together in a book, but this is a little glimpse into like my story as a photographer. So throughout that whole journey, seeking to respect the people in front of my lens and their culture and whoever I would encounter on this journey. I used to love to talk a lot about why stories matter, but at some point that's not enough. If we don't know how to tell stories with dignity. I found this article during the pandemic by Nana Kofi Akwa. I don't know if some of you know him, but the article is called "The Baggage That Lives With You Forever." And he really made me realize what a privilege storytelling is and what a responsibility comes with that because of that. And the article was on the ethics of photographing a pandemic. And he's saying that authority first begins with the word author. Like once you see a strong image, it stays with you forever. So whoever writes the story owns the power. And the article does a great job at highlighting all the damage that has been done for centuries within the photography industry and through colonial and Western gaze, of course, the unequal power dynamics that we find in this industry, and how the continent of Africa has been portrayed so wrongly for so long, for so many centuries. And this has led me to like put a few questions together that I'm committed to asking myself before telling any story, to check my own intentions and wanting to prioritize the humanity of the people in front of me, that whose stories I get to listen to and I get to document, which is an immense privilege. So I just wanted to share these questions with you today. Hopefully they are helping you to become a more responsible storyteller in relation to the in front of you. So our intention matters. Obviously, why do we want to tell a certain story? Is it to make us feel better about ourselves, or do we actually want to make a difference? What purpose does the photos we take serve? Are we using our privilege, if we have one, to perpetuate stereotypes, or are we working towards bringing them down? Context matters. Like, do we know the whole story? Like, have we learned about the history of our creative medium, for example, the camera? Have we researched about the history of the place we want to document? Do we know what current narratives exist already that are potentially damaging to this person's community? We would love to document, like, through which lens would this story be told best? Is it our lens? Is it maybe someone else's lens? Respect matters. Are we approaching the story with the attitude of seeking first to understand? Are we showing up in a way that respects this specific person's culture? What is important in the specific culture we seek to highlight? Have we done our research job? Informed consent matters. Have we informed the people whose story we are telling about the story's purpose, the audience, and its final intended usage, where it's going to be shared? Have we considered bringing the whole community in the story crafting process? Are we creating transparency around the process? Are we compensating them, especially if we at any point financially benefit off sharing the story? Are we sharing the photo or the story with them personally afterwards? Connection matters. Are we first connecting on a personal level without any camera, notepad, etc.? Just, do we know their name? Do we explain what we are doing? Do we make them feel part of the creative process? How might we be getting in the way of the person feeling safe? This especially alludes to like a male-female dynamic as well. If it's sensitive stories, dignity matters. People are not projects. Are we giving the person our undivided attention? Are we respecting their boundaries and privacies in the storytelling process? What is the person comfortable sharing with? Would I or my community be okay with being represented this way? Are the people happy and proud with how they are being represented? The story the way we would want our story to be told? Are we defining people by their problems or by their aspirations and contributions? Representation matters. As I already mentioned, the question like, is this our story to tell? Thinking about power dynamics, who controls the story, who benefits from the story, who profits of the story? Does the story fit their desired narrative? How do people want their own story to be told? Are our stories contributing towards dismantling power imbalances or keeping them the same? And then the last thing, which we already heard before already today as well, nuance matters. Are we truthfully representing a situation or story to educate our audience of the realities, complexities, and nuances of the issue we are advocating for? Is the story oversimplifying or sensationalizing the dynamics of the context, the personal experiences of the people involved? Does the story perpetuate stereotypes? So these are some of the questions I've collected over the years that have really helped me to constantly just desiring to become a better and more responsible storyteller. So I want to finish with some encouraging words for you all to go out and tell your stories. Your story matters is the message of my brand, because I really believe that it does. Every single chapter, every love, every loss, every trial, every triumph, there are people who need your story, who you are, your truest human self, the way you live your life, the way you see the world, the way you love, the way you think, your work, your craft, your passion, your reason for living, your ideas, your words, your experience, your questions, your dreams, what you believe in, your vision for what our world can and should be, your journey with all its twists and turns and moments in between. Your story is a gift to others, and owning your story is the bravest thing you might ever do. So what's your story is the question I want to leave you with. And there were some other words in the article of Nana Kofi Akua, which I really can recommend to read, that said, it's about time that Africa started telling her own stories, that we take ownership of our stories in very compelling and eloquent ways. The world won't have a choice but to change how they think about and see us. Photography is a critical part of our future, and that excites me. So, as a mosaic of cultures, languages, and traditions, let your narratives be a symphony that harmonizes these diverse elements, creating a powerful, unified melody that will transcend borders and create a new narrative for Africa.
Anya, thank you so much for this. I mean, the the poetry at the ending, it was so profound. Thank you for sharing that with us. We have a quick question that we want to ask. So, how do we go about telling stories when informed consent is rejected? For instance, investigative journalism with like hidden cameras, where there's no informed consent, and it's how do we go about that?
I personally have not had a situation like this. As in, I always say, if there is no consent, there is no story. But that obviously is in scenarios where it's a curated story in a way, right? But if you're talking now about documenting realities that need to be seen for the sake of, I guess, witnessing what's happening, because I guess the people who are part of this wouldn't want this to be seen. So I think that's a very tricky situation with where you probably would have to get creative in a way of not showing people's faces, not showing anything where no consent is given. But yeah, so I don't feel I could speak on this with any like yeah how do you say that, knowledge, because I have not done that. I just know for myself personally, I like if there's no consent given, then that's always hard. But I'm also not a photojournalist, so I feel that's probably a gray zone there that I think a photojournalist should probably speak on more than me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing, to our present day, consciousness, the importance of responsible storytelling. It just was a wonderful way to climax everything we have learned today to be responsible in our storytelling. Thank you so much, Sonia.
You.
And I want to say thank you to our wonderful audience. You have been absolutely amazing. Thank you for staying with us throughout. And thank you to our amazing keynote speakers. You all have just freely given to us all today, and we have been greatly impacted. We've been equipped, we've been sensitized for further action as we go forward. Thank you all so much for joining the Visionary Voices Africa conference today. We want to invite you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Africa Telling Her Story. You can keep in touch with us on our social media platforms and our website. It's showing right here on the screen, afidff.org. And the video of today's conference will be available on our YouTube page. So you can always come back and watch it. Please like, comment, and share. Share the links. Share the link on all your platforms: WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, on all your social media platforms. Let's get the word out, because what we've heard here today, everyone's got to hear it. These were indeed visionary voices, and they have just got to be heard. So thank you once again. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep in touch with us, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for watching. Until we see you next time. Thank you also to our wonderful speakers.